Welcome to the Chilling Ghost Stories channel. Today we bring you a famous Chinese ghost story titled The Moonlight Mystery. If you enjoy the story, please give us a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's get started.
Chapter 8. Interviewing the Dead.
If I had known about this trip earlier, I would have advised you to listen to me and get off at Wuxi Station back when you left your house. Xīn and Xiè Xùn walked side by side out of the train station. The sky was filled with gray clouds. Late spring weather in Jiannan was often like this. Help me look at the map, and please talk less. This time returning to Jiannan, Xīn had called Xùn, and Xùn naturally wished for nothing more than this. The driver, Peng, had informed Xīn that over the past 16 years, out of the 12 female students from dormitory 405 who jumped from the building, there was one named Shěn Wèi Tīng who had an accident in 1977 but was saved in time and survived. However, after having her leg amputated, Qing's life was tied to a specially designed wheelchair, and her mental health took a heavy blow. Qing had to drop out of school and return home. That year, Peng had driven Qing back to her parents' home in Yuxin, and he had recorded her address. Qing pleaded with him persistently, and after much hesitation, Peng finally shared the information. Qing believed she would gain valuable insights from this visit, as Peng mentioned that Qing had also been hospitalized in a psychiatric institution. Qing and Xùn traveled by car from Wuxi Station to Xīnwei Town in Yixin County. After numerous inquiries, they finally set foot on the street where the Shen family lived. Strangely enough, they couldn't find the house number they were looking for despite searching throughout the neighborhood. Qin asked an elderly woman who ran a small grocery store and learned that the area had been renovated. The Shen family's old residence, part of a row of single-story houses, had been replaced by apartment buildings. The shopkeeper pointed to a 7-story building diagonally ahead and sighed. They've been assigned to the 6th floor. Thankfully, there's an elevator. Otherwise, it would be very inconvenient for Qin to go up and down. The door of apartment 601 was opened by a young woman with a delicate appearance. She was seated in a wheelchair, her 2 pant legs limp and empty. Her eyes held a hint of wariness as she looked at the 2 unfamiliar visitors. There was no need to ask. This was undoubtedly Shěn Wèi Tīng. "Excuse me, are you Shěn Wei?" Qin looked directly at Qin and nodded slightly. Qin continued, "I'm Ye Xīn, a student from Jiāng Jīng Medical University." Clearly, Qin's breathing quickened as she coldly asked, "What do you want?" and then fell silent, showing no intention of inviting them in. Qin hesitated, unsure of what to say, and after a moment of awkward silence, she glanced at Xie Xùn. Xùn still had that same quirky demeanor as before, which made it better for him to say nothing at all. "I'm not sure how to say this properly. I want to know about the circumstances you faced at Jiāng Jīng Medical University back then, but I'm also very concerned about bringing up unpleasant or even painful memories for you," Qin managed to say reluctantly. "Don't worry, I don't remember anything anymore, so I won't feel pain. Besides, without these legs, I've lost all sensation," Qin said, almost reciting from memory. Her gaze shifted to Xie Xùn, and she continued to look directly at him. "I understand. I know you've been through a lot in the past, and you don't want to talk about it, but me and 5 other girls need your help. We are in room 405 of building 13. Qin stated the purpose of their visit. Qin trembled slightly, her eyes still fixed on Xie Xùn's face. After a moment, her wheelchair moved back. "Please, come in." The apartment was simple but neat, though a bit dimly lit. The door from the living room to the balcony was tightly shut, and the windows on either side of the balcony were smaller than those in typical apartments. "I'm sure everyone must think I'm lucky. The girls who jumped before and after me all died, and I'm the only one who survived. But sometimes, living isn't necessarily better luck. A disabled person like me can hardly find a regular job. My parents had me late in life, and now both of them are past retirement age, but because they have to take care of me, they still work long hours at a porcelain factory in the town of Zisha. Besides that, for years after I dropped out and went home, I've been a regular at all sorts of hospitals, including psychiatric hospitals. I've taken so many medications that I ruined my kidneys, so I ended up taking even more. It's a perfect example of a vicious cycle, don't you think? Xiên slowly revealed her feelings. I hope I haven't rambled too much. These are things I've wanted to say for a long time, but I couldn't tell my parents. I didn't want to hurt them. They've worked so hard. Go ahead and say it, as long as it makes you feel better, feeling pity for Xiên as she vented. What do you want to know? Back in that late spring and early summer, was there anything unusual in your life? Why did you choose such a desperate path? Xiên sighed, looking up at the sky outside the window. Her voice was slow. I really can't remember. If I did, the police wouldn't have had to suspend the case. They still haven't solved it. Even I believe their conclusion that the pressure from school was too much. When I was in school, it's true I cared about grades a lot. I wanted to break through. The day I fell, there were blankets and clothes hanging from the bamboo poles between the third and second floors, and I got caught in those before I fell to the ground. I survived, but I had a severe brain injury, and that's why I've forgotten so many things. Even now, I haven't recovered. I often forget things that happened just the day before. Hearing Xiãn's absolute denial, Xiên felt a bit disappointed, but still hoped to seize the final opportunity. Could you tell me, what is moonlight? Xiãn's whole body shook violently. She quickly moved her wheelchair back and stared directly at Yashin. What did you say? Say it again. Moonlight. What is moonlight? There was a long silence, and then Xiãn's delicate face twisted in anguish. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her chest, breathing heavily. Her eyes showed clear signs of panic and despair. Xīn and Xiè Xùn exchanged looks, unsure of what to say or do next. Finally, Xiãn calmed down. Her gaze became cold and sharp. She glanced at the two of them briefly, then turned the wheels of her chair, facing away from them. In a flat tone, she said, "Your question is really strange. I don't understand it. I'm tired now. Please don't bother me anymore. I'm sorry for making you come all this way. You should have prepared yourself for this." Xian was reluctant, but considering Xiãn's earlier reaction, she couldn't continue asking. Besides, the host seemed to have made it clear that she wanted them to leave. Xian waited a moment, but seeing Xiãn still silent, she finally spoke. "We've bothered you. Thank you for being honest. If you ever want to talk to me, here's the number for my dorm's on-call service. You can call me anytime and we can chat, whatever you want to say." As they turned to leave, Xiãn was still staring blankly out the window and coldly said, "Please close the door for me." Xiãn felt dejected as she walked down the stairs. Xùn tried to lighten the mood, saying, "Come on, don't be so down. At least we met her, right? What should we do next? Shall we buy some zisha teapots or visit Tianzhuan Cave, maybe go to Taihu?" Xiãn snapped. "Why are you so thoughtless? This trip was a waste. It's almost June 16th, and you're still thinking about sightseeing? We have to go back to Jinjin and catch the train. There's no time left." Xùn smirked, showing no signs of disagreeing. At that moment, Xiãn realized that he was deliberately teasing her so she would scold him, and the scolding would help relieve her frustration. She felt a sweet sensation. Compared to Xiãn, she was so much luckier. Xiãn reproached him. "I've never met someone who actually wants to be scolded like you. As long as it makes you happy, even if you throw me into Taihu, I don't mind." The smile on Yashing's face made Wuxi's eyes sparkle like the sun breaking through the clouds. But he looked a little dazed. "Come on, we're on the street." Seeing Wuxi looking at her like that, Yashing became annoyed and pushed him. The two of them were laughing when they suddenly heard someone calling from a distance. "Yashing, there's a phone call for you." Why would someone call her here? Yashing felt uneasy and looked in the direction of the voice. It was the shopkeeper. In front of the store, there was indeed a public phone service. "Yashing, is that you? It's Shěn Wèi Tīng." Wei Qin's voice was hurried, very different from the calm tone she had earlier. "What's wrong?" Yashing felt her pulse quicken as Shěn Wèi Tīng had called her urgently, which must have been about something important. "About your question earlier." "Okay, I'll come to your house right away." "No need, we can talk on the phone." "Because I have a feeling." Wei Qin's breath was rapid and heavy. "A feeling of what?" "Don't ask. It's about the question you asked me, the moonlight." Wei Tīng said, becoming even more frantic. What's wrong? Yixin gripped the receiver tightly, her intuition sensing something terrible. The file? Yueguan Society. Yueguan means moonlight, society, an organization, like a news agency. Wayne's voice suddenly cut off, followed by a muffled groan. Yixin thought to herself, this is bad, and pressed the receiver to her ear, only hearing a cacophony of noise. Yixin threw the receiver down and ran toward the tall building, shouting, Wuqin! A terrible scream shattered the midday stillness. Xun ran up behind her, grabbed her arm, and said shakily, Look. Yixin turned her gaze in the direction he pointed. What she saw would haunt her for many nights. A girl falling from a high floor, flailing her arms in the air, a scream tearing through the air. It was Shěn Wèi Tīng. Another cry rang out behind her from the shopkeeper. Tears streamed down Yixin's face, her heart aching, but she hesitated for only a moment before running again. From the sounds on the phone, it couldn't have been a suicide. Someone had definitely murdered Wei Qing's.
When Yixin reached the building, a crowd had already gathered. She couldn't wait for the elevator, so she rushed up the stairs, but the stairs were crowded with people, mostly women and the elderly. It took her a while to reach the 6th floor, where she saw the door of room 601 half closed, just like when she and Xun had left earlier. Yixin hesitated for a moment but then turned the doorknob. The place was brightly lit, the door to the balcony was wide open, and the empty wheelchair was abandoned there. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed, crying uncontrollably. Did you know Shěn Wèi Tīng before? The officer, Gu, asked. Yixin shook her head. You came all the way from Jiāng Jīng to meet Wei Tīng for something important? Officer Gu, knowing Yixin was the last person to see Wei Tīng, was personally investigating the matter. I'm a reporter from the 2nd radio station of Jiangnan University of Medicine. I've been working on a special report. Shěn Wèi Tīng is a student at the school and is involved in this topic. Yixin's eyes were swollen from crying, but her thoughts were still clear. Can you elaborate more? Gu asked gently, seeing how upset she was. Our dormitory has had a female student commit suicide by jumping off the building almost every year. Over the past 10 years, only Wei Tīng survived. Surely she deserves an interview. Yixin's words were firm. Officer Gu thought to himself, this girl likes to ask probing questions. He became serious. Why, after seeing Wei Tīng fall, did you rush upstairs and disturb the crime scene? When I heard the phone call, I heard a lot of noise, and I guess there must be someone behind Wei Qing's death. I hope to catch the murderer, even just a glimpse, to help you all find a clue. Yixin explained, despite her tears. The building was chaotic at the time. Everyone rushed down. How could you have known who the murderer was? What did you see when you reached the scene? That's right, I didn't see anything. I just saw the door was still closed, but it wasn't locked, just like when we left. Who were you with? Gu pressed. I was with a male classmate, Xie Xùn. Where was he when Wei Tīng fell? Officer Gu furrowed his brow. He was standing right next to me. Then I ran upstairs, and I don't know where he went. Before that, he was always with me. Is he your boyfriend? Yixin didn't know how to answer, so she said, it's complicated. Let's just say we're friends. By the way, is this relevant to the case? Whether it's relevant or not is for us to decide, Officer Gu replied. We haven't been able to question him yet, but if you see him, let him know that if necessary, we'll come to the school to talk to him. Can I ask about the preliminary investigation? Was it murder or suicide? Yixin asked, her voice trembling. We can't conclude anything yet. Officer Gu softened his tone, seeing her distress. At first glance, it seems like a suicide. We didn't find any signs of a struggle or any suspicious fingerprints or footprints. It can't be. Yixin was adamant. Because I heard all those noises on the phone. That's what I need to ask you. what did Wei Tīng say in her last moments? Where have you run off to? Yexing asked as she stepped out of the police station, meeting Xiè Xùn. I told you, I don't know anything more about this case than you do. Why should I go in and get interrogated? It's not fun at all. Xùn responded. Yexing felt frustrated. We've messed up, haven't we? We missed the train. Now we have to wait for the next one, probably until late tonight. That's why it's a smart move for you to bring me along. Waiting for the train will take a while, and we can at least chat while we're at it. Xùn said. Yexing no longer felt like chatting with him. She was irritated and didn't even want to return to school. She walked away in silence. Seeing her mood, Xùn didn't say anything further and just quietly followed her. After grabbing some food quickly, Yexing sat in the waiting room at the train station, dozing off in her seat. As soon as she closed her eyes, she suddenly saw the cold, sharp gaze of Shěn Wèi Tīng, followed by the horrifying image of Qing falling to the ground with a mangled face. Yexing couldn't bear to look at Qing's body, but that mutilated face remained etched in her mind. It seemed like it was indeed Wei Tīng, but at the same time, it resembled the woman in the white dress she'd seen in her dreams. In a month's time, whose face would that be? Yexing suddenly felt suffocated, as though a heavy weight was pressing down on her chest, and her stomach churned. She couldn't hold it in anymore and vomited up everything she had just eaten. She opened her eyes, looking at the mess before her, and thought of the mangled face from her dream. She covered her mouth with a tissue and cried silently. Xùn felt awkward, placing a hand on Yexing's shoulder. It's okay, you just threw up. There's no one else around, so don't cry. I'm the reason Wei Tīng died. I was the only one who survived the 405 murder case, and now she's gone. It's my fault. Yexing suddenly felt very alone. A sense of real fear overwhelmed her, surging in waves, as if ferocious beasts hidden in the night could suddenly leap out and devour her. She leaned her head on Xùn's arm and began to sob uncontrollably. Don't say such nonsense, Xùn said gently. The tragedy has already happened. Now, you should make use of the rare clue you have, the Yue Guang Xia case file. Keep investigating this strange history. If you can uncover the truth and put an end to the 405 murder case, preventing any future tragedies, your actions would be very meaningful, wouldn't they? But I feel like the shadow of death is too heavy to escape from. Shěn Wèi Tīng is a clear example of that. Yexing said. Yexing, trust in yourself, believe that after giving your best effort, you will experience something completely new. Being pessimistic at this moment will only destroy yourself, Xùn reassured her. Yexing suddenly realized that Xùn wasn't as childish as he often appeared. Her expression softened, and she stopped crying, speaking gently. What you just said sounds really comforting, very much like what my mother would say. It was only then that Yexing realized she had been leaning against Xùn. Her face turned red. Do you want me to say something ridiculous? Xùn teased, returning to his usual tone. Please be serious. I'm really scared, I'm telling you. Yexing buried her head against Xùn's chest. Scared of what? I haven't told you yet. When the time comes, I'll hug you tightly like this, not letting you return to room 405, and everything will be fine. Xùn held her tighter. Yexing wanted to resist but suddenly felt she had no strength left, or perhaps, she didn't want to resist anymore. If I get possessed, my strength will become enormous when I'm mad. I'll break free from you, bite your hand, and rush into room 405, then jump out the window. Yexing felt like she was becoming just like Xùn and San, speaking nonsense. I'll chase after you and hug you even tighter. My strength is boundless. If I decide to jump, what will you do? Yexing continued teasing. Then I'll jump with you. Xùn replied. Stop talking nonsense. For a long time, they remained in silence, sitting still. At this moment, Yexing finally learned how to stop thinking, letting time pass quietly. Outside the waiting room, she could occasionally see trains coming to a stop and leaving again. Everything continued in its usual order. Passengers walked back and forth, boarding and alighting, everything remained peaceful, and the warmth seemed to dissipate. However, Yexing couldn't enjoy this peace for long. She vaguely felt that outside, not far from her, there were countless unknown things staring at her coldly. "Why are you so quiet? Tell me about your mother. You said you've never met her." Yexing asked. Xùn responded, "Would you really be uncomfortable if I tell you?" "Fine, don't tell me then." Yexing pretended to sit up straight and lean away. Xùn held her tighter. "I already told you, you absolutely shouldn't refuse." Yexing fell silent and looked into Xùn's eyes, which were filled with warmth and endless desire. She almost agreed to him. "Actually, I don't have any right to ask anything from you," Xùn sighed. "The story is simple. My mother left shortly after giving birth to me and never came back." Xùn clearly tried to brush off the topic. "But you still had good conditions. Among all the students, who else gets to learn the piano?" Yexing replied. Xùn avoided the topic as usual, so Yexing decided to change the subject. Good conditions don't necessarily mean happiness. And what's the point of bringing it up? Anyway, I'm here now, in the arms of the girl I like. What more could I ask for? I think you're still shameless. Yexing chuckled. By the way, don't forget to mention a childhood friend you're extremely close with. You seem so happy. What's his name? Li Zhiyang. That's someone you haven't seen when we were fighting. Xùn said, trying to avoid the topic. Even couples argue from time to time. Sometimes arguing and fighting is a sign of true love. Yexing replied. Over the past 6 months, she and San had been the subject of many jokes from their friends, so she applied the same teasing behavior to Xùn, feeling no guilt at all. Perhaps because of my family situation, I've always been sensitive and sentimental since I was little. Fortunately, I met Jiāng. We played and grew up together, and life became much richer. Then we both got into the same university and ended up in the same class. It's really rare to find a friend like that. Xùn continued, his tone softening. Maybe you two not only share feelings but also a special fate. Even though you're both young men, sounds a bit strange saying it like that, but isn't that really the case? Yexing said thoughtfully, becoming serious. You can't really call it fate. For example, if two people work hard together, pass the university entrance exam, and end up in the same school, is that really fate? Not necessarily. Plus, sometimes when you get too close, the feelings can become a burden. Xùn sighed again. After hearing Xùn's words, Yexing suddenly had an idea. She straightened up and said nonchalantly, you're right. Humans are naturally inclined to seek new things. That's why it's important to keep a distance in the beginning. She silently blamed herself for misunderstanding him earlier. Xùn realized Yexing had come to a logical conclusion and didn't know what to say. He fell silent until he noticed that her eyes were turning red. But with you, it's different. I truly love you.